Good evening, grand rising, good afternoon. Whenever I got you in front of me, we're just happy to have you. As you probably already guessed, this is the In Good Company Black Legacy series, and I always like to start these episodes off with privilege and gratitude. And this episode is not short of that. This young lady and I have met each other years ago. I couldn't even tell you when, at a woman's circle on a fluke. And I've just been humbly watching her growth and development and giving back to her people ever since. She's inspiration to me and for the works that I got going on in the community. And so from the Bay to now Chicago, she's still doing her thing. So I don't want to take away from your introduction, but I did want to give a little highlight. But if you will, give us a brief introduction to yourself, what you do, what you got going, and that's that.
Thank you so much. You are so sweet. That was a beautiful introduction. I don't even want to say anything right now to mess it up.
Thank you.
My name is Brandy Walker. On the internet, I go by Brandy Was Here. That's the name of my company. It's a consulting company. I work as an educator and a holistic life coach, which means I hold people accountable and I help them find happiness on their journey.
Love that. I love that. You had a lot of hot words, which are like holistic, accountability. Those are big deals to me. So I love all of that. Did you want to elaborate a little bit on like how you hold people accountable and the holistic approach in the ways that you do?
Yeah. So I started my career, I guess I would say career. As a kid, I was in a lot of different things and people were concerned for me because I never really knew what I wanted to do with my life. I just knew I was going to do something, right?
Yes.
And so when I went to college, I settled on education because I was really bothered by the education system and what people were calling education, right? Kids were going through school, but they weren't coming out educated. And I started volunteering with the school. And I wanted to help hold kids accountable to their own learning, right? So I saw kids just showing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
They would show up, but they weren't really doing anything. I saw teachers showing up, but they weren't really committed to making the learning happening, right? So a couple of students, I was in a classroom one day where a teacher just walked out and I'm a volunteer and I stayed with the students and got them started on something. And the principal of that school wanted me to become a teacher. And it's really, although I had been volunteering in schools, my mom was a school secretary for 30 plus years. I never considered myself to do it, right? Mm-hmm. What I learned in teaching is that a lot of people go into teaching because they're passionate about their subject matter. But that is not at all what teaching is. That is a very small part of what you do in teaching. You need to be a counselor. You need to be a great listener. You need to be resourceful. You need to be a social worker of sorts in order to get kids the things that they need. And when I got into education and started doing that, I realized that it had been something that I had always been doing with the people in my life. I had always been resourceful. I had always been a go-to for giving advice, right? I was a teacher, but really students came up to me as if I was the school counselor. I would help them get started on their college applications. I would help them find jobs. I would help them make sense of what they were learning in the classroom and apply it to their real life because no other teachers were doing that. They didn't know how to do that. And so I was helping them with that. And then one year I started an accountability group just because I wanted an accountability partner. There were goals that I was working on. And I just put a post out on my Facebook group and said, hey, I'm starting this accountability group. Who wants to join? And because I have that teaching background, it was probably a little more structured than people were expecting, right? I had like weekly tasks we were going to do, and we were checking in, and they would fill it out on a sheet, and everybody in the group had a partner. We were doing all these things. And somebody in the group said, I love what you're doing with your business. I'm like, because this is not a business for me. And I said, well, maybe it is, right? Maybe it is. And the more I worked in teaching, the more I just got burnt out and frustrated with the system. I thought that by being in the system, I could help to change it, but really it was changing me into a person that I did not want to be. Mm-hmm. My mental health was suffering. I had a nervous breakdown in my classroom, and I kicked all the students out and locked the door. And I called the principal and I said, I know I'm supposed to give a 2 weeks notice, but this is it. I'm like, when I get myself together and open this door, I'm not coming back. Like, this is it. And through that, I really worked on myself, which allowed me to have a more holistic approach, right? People are going to tell you, you should do this, you should do that, you should do that. But really the best way is whatever way works. And I find that the way that works is pulling from a variety of different sources. So in 2018, when I got really serious about my business, I went and got my life coaching certification. I went and got a bunch of different certifications. I got certified in grief therapy and things like that. Like, you get certified in things without getting your license, right? But you can have like, you know, these different certificates, because I wanted to be able to meet people where they were, right? And not just have, most coaches that you would meet, life coaches or otherwise, they'll have like a real cookie cutter approach, right? This is what I do. Everybody's got to fit into these boxes. Even if you go like get a wellness coach or something, they're like, this is the meal plan I have. I hope it works for you. And if it doesn't, you can find another coach, right? But I really want to meet people where they are. And I started realizing that while people came to me for accountability, people come and say, I have this goal I want to reach. You know, a lot of people, they struggle to reach their goals because really they were broken inside, right? They struggled to reach their goals because they needed to do some work with their inner child. They couldn't be consistent and hold themselves accountable because they really didn't have self-love, right? So when people come up to me, I'm going through the whole life scenario, right? And trying to meet them where they are to get them where it is they want to be.
Yes. Oh, that's heavy. Like, my brain is literally tingling. I was like, she's hitting it. This is where we at. This is what I want to talk about. With your works, do you, because I want to kind of include that we're addressing Black history and the legacy that we're manifesting for ourselves. Do you have intentionality with like the melanated audience? Because I feel like that's what inspires me, and kind of thwarts my aspirations, because like counseling and seeking help is such a taboo still, even in 2022, like especially for, you know, our Black men. So as far as what you do and how passionate you are, do you aim for that certain demographic, and how do you encourage it?
When you start a business, people say like, you have to think about your target audience, right? Who's your demographic? Who are you gonna serve? And for me, you know, when I was going through everything I was going through with teaching, I was in the church at that time, and I was struggling because people would tell me to pray, right? And I was like, okay, you know, I'm doing a little prayer every day. I'm reading my scripture. I went to church this week. Check, check, check. I still feel the same way. I'm still sad, and I don't know why. I'm like driving to work crying every day, right? I have this headache that won't go away. Like, these things happen. Then you go to the doctor, and they're like, okay, fill out this, you know, 100-page questionnaire about all the reasons why you might be depressed. And then they tabulate and say yes or no, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't working. And so for me, the idea of therapy was very taboo. I didn't know anybody that had ever went to therapy for any reason ever in life. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why people go. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. Did my insurance cover it? Like, where would I find these people? What was Google telling me? Like, I didn't know. And so for me, I started listening to podcasts. I read a lot, so I started reading books on the things that I wanted to learn. And so for me, it's important that I serve people who look like me, who experience what I experience, because while someone like me may not, you know, go through the yellow pages and contact a therapist, they will hit up their homegirl, which is me, right, on the internet, because I'm showing up as my authentic self and say, hey, this is what I went through. Here's how I can help you. I'm not necessarily sitting behind a desk or at a couch with my notepad out to say, I'm going to fix you, right? I'm not going to fix you, or I'm not trying to embarrass you for your life situation. Like, it's me. I know you. You know me. Like, we connect on that level. So now let's work through whatever the issue is.
Yes, that's heavy. Like, that's the story for many. Like, and I hope whoever I'm thinking of partakes and listen to this, because it just makes it seem accessible. Like, you don't have to have a starting point. You don't have to know anything. You just have to have the willingness and openness to. And so you kind of mentioned this, I feel like, in your background and in your story of how you even got to this place, but who in history, like Black history, inspires you and maybe even kind of inspired your progression to this point? Just kind of like a reminder, like we all serve our purpose in Black history. So if it's your mother, so be it, and whoever else.
Yeah, there are definitely three major figures that have not only inspired me, but just really changed the entire trajectory of my life. Like I said, growing up, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was the type of person, I didn't think I was good at anything. I was very shy as a kid. I was the only girl in my family. I had boys. I always felt that I was very different and very much an outcast, right? But like I said before, I read a lot. And one of the people that my mom really loved was Langston Hughes. And she always put, like, you know, we did Black History all year in my house, but, you know, like when you go to school and they're like, you got to do it, you got to do it. My mom always be like Langston Hughes, right? Yeah. And so I read a lot about him. And it was, I think, that summer after middle school, going into high school, I read The Big C by Langston Hughes. It is a pretty thick book. But if you're a person that is struggling to find your purpose in life, you're kind of trying to figure things out, it's a really great book to read. I learned so much about him as a person, but what I learned most importantly is you don't have to have your purpose written down and decided in order to be great at something, in order to be happy or succeed in life. For Langston Hughes, he was kind of that kid. He floated back and forth. He had a bunch of different jobs, but he always wrote. Prior to him becoming a poet, he didn't even know that poets existed. He didn't know that people got paid for writing poetry. But he would write, he was a waiter at a restaurant. And as a thank you to try to get tips, he would write, you know, jot down a little poem on a napkin, right? Mm-hmm. And slide it to the customers. And he would get tips. And then one day someone said, you know, I would love to pay you to write me a couple of poems. And that's how he got patrons, and he sustained himself his entire career doing that. And for me, that was life-changing, because growing up in Richmond, California, you knew people that worked, and then you knew people that stayed home because they were on government assistance. And mostly in my neighborhood, my family were the only people that worked. And they had what people would consider good jobs. And so for me, it seemed like the only option was to get a job that I hated, because everybody who had a job would complain about their job, yeah, or sit at home all day and just let the government take care of you. And for me, neither of those seemed appealing, right? If I was going to work, I didn't want to then complain about working all day. Like, that didn't seem fun. And I also felt like I was too talented just to sit around and kind of do nothing, right? The money that people get on government assistance is not enough to actually take care of yourself. So that meant I would have to do something illegal or have some kind of random side hustle or whatever. And I didn't want to do that. And so that book and Langston Hughes just inspired me. And also him being a writer and me being a writer and being shy. Langston Hughes, there are 3 poems, I think, that are recorded of Langston Hughes actually reading his own poems out loud. 3. Just 3. He would write and he wouldn't read. He would publish books and not do signings. Like, he hung out with the people that he hung out with, but he was not like that type of public figure. He was very much behind the scenes. And that was important for me to know and understand too, because so many people who we admire in history are those outgoing, extroverted people. And I would think to myself, either I'm just gonna have to become a new person or whatever it is I wanna do in life just isn't gonna happen for me, right? Yeah. And I think it's important to see those people too. The other person is another writer, Maya Angelou. I read all of her books. I didn't read her books. I knew of her poetry, but I didn't read her books until my adult life. And that really carried me through being a mother as well, being a single mother for most of my life, really understanding what that journey looks like. Maya Angelou was very adamant that even though I'm a mother, I'm also a woman too. And I have to have my own identity. I have to grow as a woman and then grow as a parent, right? A lot of people, and I think me too, when I was first becoming a mom, like many people, I said, you know, my child is my world. That is my mini me. right? And I was so attached to that title of mother, I really didn't understand who I was as a woman.
Yep.
Right. But Maya Angelou says those things have to be separate, or else you're not going to be a good parent, and you're not going to be sane, and you're just not going to be happy doing anything that you do until you really nurture your identity. And for Maya Angelou, you know, she didn't publish her first book until she was in her late 40s. She went through her life having many different careers, would pick up and move at the thought of an opportunity. You know, she left New York and took up her son and her family and just moved to LA because somebody wanted her to write a play in LA, and she stayed there for a year, and then she left LA and went to I think she went to Ghana at that point, right? But she just picked up and moved, which was a radical idea that women, right, women who were unmarried could make drastic and risky decisions like that, right? And that's something that I definitely needed to hear and know and understand in my adult life. The third person is Tupac. I love me some Tupac. I have a Tupac tribute on my arm, just because I think, for all the reasons that people love Tupac, I think he was very clear about the direction that he wanted to go in his life. Yeah. I talk a lot about manifesting, and people who fake manifest on the internet, right? It's like, oh, this is what I want to put on my vision board, and it's just gonna come to me, right? Tupac was very intentional. He manifested through his speech. All the things that he wanted to do, he talked about doing it. He told people. Because he is very vocal about the things that he wanted to do, he is able to accomplish a lot in a little time, right? This is somebody who died at 25, but had X amount of movies, X amount of albums, X amount of relations, X amount of businesses in the works, right? At that age, because he spoke the things that he wanted into existence. And I think that's important for people to know too, that sometimes we want to be so isolated. We feel like if we tell somebody, they're going to steal our idea and take it and run with it. But when you tell people what you're working on, what you want to do, right? It says in The Alchemist, right? Soon as you let the universe know what you want to do, it will conspire. Everything conspires for it to happen. That's not the exact quote, but y'all figure it out. Y'all get me right. The universe will conspire to make it happen for you. So once you tell people, then people can assist you. If I say, hey, you know, I want to start a record label, you might be like, oh, okay, girl, I know some artists that you might want to sign, or I know somebody that might help you with funding, or hey, here's this person that did this. And I might tell somebody else, they might say, hey, I know how to put together that business plan for you. But if I just sit here with my own idea in my head, my wheels are going to be turning. I'm going to stress myself out because I don't know everything. And then it may or may not happen. So when I think about people who have inspired me, I think those would be the three. And those people together, I mean, of course, there's so many other people. I'm thinking like Malcolm X, Nipsey Hussle, like Ella Baker, just like so many people that have done so much. But those people always stand out for me just because I remember those pivotal moments in my life where they really stepped in and provided that model and that example for me.
That's heavy. Whew. Yes, yes. And again, key terms, stepping in. How are you stepping into your journey, helping others find their journey? What is your contribution to Black history, our Black legacy?
That is a heavy question. I think for me, like I said, being the model and being the example. The things that I wanted to do when I was a kid, I didn't have a real example of it. Nobody was doing what I wanted to do. And so when I was younger, people asked me like, who's your role model? Or you need to get a mentor. I couldn't find anybody. There were people doing things, but I don't want to be like them. Kanye West has a quote, and he says, he never takes advice from people less successful than him. And I think about that in terms of like, I never want to take advice from somebody that I don't want to be like, right? And so that was hard for me. And so one thing that I had to learn is to just be me, right? Like I said, having those examples of people who were different but still successful, people who didn't take the traditional route or just did things that were risky and were successful, let me know that I could do that too, right? I didn't have to do what everybody else was doing. And I think that's important for people to see too, that you can be yourself, You can follow your own unique path, right? Everybody's not going to be the same type of person. Somebody could look like you but be different from you, and you can still be inspired by them, right? It's listening to the message and not necessarily the messenger. So I think what I provide in being myself is a space for other people to do the same.
Yes, yes. Like this is, man, like this was motivation for me. Like I needed to hear all of these things. So thank you, thank you, thank you. In summation, do you want to plug yourself? Anything coming up, podcasts, Instagram, anything, groups?
Yeah, I always have things coming up. I always try to challenge myself to be more visible because I will be behind my phone and behind the computer and just not show myself. But hey, y'all still here though. But you can follow me on Instagram at Brandy was here _. I'm trying to get rid of that underscore and claim my official name from whoever out there is
Right.
has it. But you know, I teach classes every month, courses and workshops on different interpersonal skills. So right now I'm doing a course on boundaries. I'm going to do one next month on shadow work. I do have an accountability group, and I do one-on-one personal coaching. So if you're watching this or listening and you think like, hey, I would benefit from somebody assisting me on this journey because I get lost in the details, or I'm not really sure what to do, or I just need somebody who can help me and bounce ideas and make sure that I stay on track, you can definitely contact me, hit me up on Instagram. All my information is there. I also do lives occasionally where I talk about topics and I bring people on too. So you can check all that out.
Dope, dope. I hope y'all listening. Take heed, take heed. Thank you so much again, Brandy. And thank you for being my good company. It's a pleasure. I definitely hope to invite you to something else soon because gems thrown out today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I think this is such a good space because we don't talk enough about the things that we really need to talk about. You know, people will spend all day going back and forth about gossip and who said what and who wore what to the award show. But these are the conversations that we really need to be having with each other.
Yes.
Right? That's how we get further, by having these conversations. So thank you so much for putting it together, for having the idea and following through, and pushing through to make it happen. Because I know that you got a baby too and you got stuff going on. And it is hard trying to get these things together. So I appreciate you for making it happen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very much appreciated. Until next time.